Hello, everyone. Welcome to SIIA Tech Chats. Today, I am joined by Dan Lohmeyer, who is Vice President of Product Management at Cisco Systems. Dan is responsible for their enterprise software portfolio. Dan, thank you so much for joining us today.
Great. Well, thanks so much for having me here, Rihanna.
Yeah, I want to jump right in. A few years ago, Cisco began this transition from a revenue based upon hardware purchases business model to a subscription based software model. Can you tell us how this transition has been progressing and where you are today?
Sure, I'm happy to, and thanks for the question. So if you think about Cisco started some 30 years ago and was one of the leaders in network-based routing, expanded to switching, then data center, collaboration, security, now even IoT. And a lot of how the company grew up was around a device-oriented model. It was extremely successful for the history of the company. Now, what's happened though recently is a lot of the changes that have taken place with companies looking to digitize their business has transitioned what customers see as most valuable, increasingly shifting away from the underlying hardware and the device into the software capabilities that run on those devices. So for example, as companies digitize their business, they really care about security across their entire environment. They want to enable different types of end user applications. And that really requires a different type of technology. And a lot of that is now delivered as software running on top of the networks. So for example, if you think about a retail branch environment, think about a shopping facility, for example. You want to be able to cater to your shoppers. You want to understand who's within your store. You want to understand where they're dwelling, what they're looking at. And you want to be able to do that to either better understand what type of inventory to stock, or even while they're in that store to be able to give them some tailored experience based upon who they are and where they're spending time on. And so all that is now delivered through software. And so what we realized as a company was that we really had to shift how we brought our new innovation to market. And instead of having it be focused around a device-oriented sale, have that be focused still on the device, but increasingly deliver more of that innovation through a software and software subscription. So that's the journey we started on about 3 years ago to essentially move more of our portfolio and more of our monetization of that portfolio into a software and subscription-based model.
So, changing a business model is a big transition, and especially for a company the size of Cisco. So what, if anything, has surprised you along this transition journey?
Sure. So if you think about a company who really started with a device-oriented model, we have amazing processes for devices. Like we can literally get a replacement device to a customer within 2 hours if they have the right level of service contract. And if you think about the supply chain, the local depots, the local channel partners, that you have to do that to physically get a device to a customer within 2 hours, it's amazing. Now, the same type of processes and systems and capabilities hadn't existed on the software and subscription side. It's a different type of capability that's important when you're delivering more things as software or subscription. So for example, a parallel for software is how do you give continuous updates, upgrades, new capabilities to your customer, right? That's something you can do through software because you don't have to physically send them a new device. They don't have to replace something in their environment. And you just stream the updates to them, the patches and the like, right? This is a model, for example, Salesforce really drove mainstream for software updates and continuous innovation, right? So that's a new process for us, right? And we're doing it in some areas, like our security portfolio and our collaboration portfolio, but bringing that same type of DevOps model to the rest of our portfolio, networking, routing, switching, wireless, the data center, right? That's a new muscle that we're currently building. And there also are new muscles around how we actually commercialize this. So for example, as you do subscription-based models, there are different types of constructs that are important to customers. So for example, the ability to define periodic billing terms. Some customers want to pay by month, some by quarter, some by year, some want to pay up front, right? So your systems have to be able to support that. And it's a different commercial construct that didn't matter as much when you were selling hardware, and essentially the customer would pay entirely upfront. So a lot of change actually goes into this. It's not as simple as saying, hey, we want to move to software and subscriptions, make it happen. You actually have to dig underneath that to see what has to be different from the way you do innovation, to how you commercialize that, to how you drive that through your sales team, your channel team, right? Even how you compensate your sales team is now different when you're operating in a software and subscription-based model than it was when you were in a hardware-oriented model.
Now, you recently launched the Cisco Enterprise Agreement. Can you talk about this a little bit, and how will this make it easier for customers to access the full Cisco software portfolio across their entire infrastructure?
Yeah, great question. So if you think about software, a lot of companies want to have enterprise-wide coverage to software capabilities. And enterprise agreements are actually very common in the software industry. So this is nothing new to customers, but they're kind of new to Cisco in that we had been doing them within our collaboration and security portfolio, where we had more software capabilities, but we never had a common enterprise agreement structure across all of Cisco. And so that's what we recently announced was the enterprise agreement, which give customers a common way of licensing our software across their entire enterprise. Now, what we did was, which was interesting, is it wasn't just playing a catch-up game to what other companies have done from an enterprise agreement perspective. We actually introduced a number of net new things to the industry overall. Perhaps the most compelling one is what we call as the true forward process. So if you think about many enterprise agreements, customers are penalized for over-consuming the technology. Meaning if you sign an agreement with most software companies, I won't name names because that would be nice, but what they have is they have a process called true up, where at the end of the period, you essentially have to look back at, did you overconsume? And if you did, you have to actually pay for both the previous period and the next period going forward. So essentially companies were double penalized as part of this enterprise agreement. With the Cisco enterprise agreement, we've removed that. So there is no true up process. Instead, we have true forward, which says we don't make you back pay, right? Anything you overconsumed for the previous period, that's on us, right? Thank you for using our technology. Now, at the same time, we do need to monetize it. So we say is going forward, if you're going to continue to use that above the certain level, then you only pay going forward, right? So essentially gives the customers flexibility to say, look, if we don't want to consume that much, we're going to ratchet it back down. We don't have to do this true forward. But most companies will see the value of the software and agree to pay going forward. So that's really an industry-leading benefit of the Cisco Enterprise Agreement. The other thing that we've done, which is industry-leading, is we don't anticipate that we'll even have to use this true forward process for most customers because we've given a 20% growth allowance. So what that means is when you sign the enterprise agreement, it's based upon the number of devices or the number of users in your environment for that technology. So routing, switching, wireless, and most of security is device-based. A lot of our collaboration portfolio and some of the security end user software is user-based. And what we do is when you sign the enterprise agreement, you get a 20% growth allowance. So you can literally grow your number of devices or your number of users by 20% and never pay an additional dime. Now that, again, is industry leading. Most companies don't do this, right? If you overconsume by one user, you're paying for that additional user. And the reason why we did this is we got a lot of feedback from customers and partners that once they sign the agreement, they don't want to be nickel and dime. So we gave a very generous 20% allowance so that for most customers, they would never exceed that because most customers aren't growing the number of people by 20% over 3 years or the number of devices by 20% over 3 years. And if they do for some reason, then that true forward process kicks in. So then they only pay going forward. So those are two very unique and distinct benefits that the Cisco Enterprise Agreement provides, which really are industry leading.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Now, before I let you go, Dan, can you give us some insight into what's next on Cisco's journey to modernizing networking infrastructure?
Sure, happy to. So one of the models that we have inside Cisco is called the Meraki. It's a company we acquired some years back, and it's been extremely successful. It's essentially a device like a router, a switch, a security device, a wireless access point, attached to a subscription that provides cloud management. That portfolio has been incredibly successful, growing 30–40% per year. And what we're doing is we're essentially bringing that same model to the rest of our infrastructure portfolio. All of our Catalyst, Nexus, wireless devices, routing portfolio, where you'll have a simple cloud-based management console. You initially manage through the private cloud, over time transition to the public cloud, and you'll be able to consume that similar to Meraki with a hardware plus subscription-based model. Now, we recently launched the Catalyst 9K just last month, and it's essentially an industry-leading switch for campus switching, access switching, and attached to that is a subscription and access to the DNA Center, which is like the Meraki dashboard. We'll be applying that same model across the rest of our switching portfolio, as well as wireless and our routing portfolio, because it's extremely compelling for customers. It gives them a graphical user interface to manage their network environment, so it simplifies their ongoing configuration, management, provisioning tasks. And then the model is actually very simple. It's a device plus a subscription. So it also simplifies how they purchase that. And then if they want to do it across their entire enterprise, they can use the enterprise agreement as a way of doing that from a contractual perspective. So they don't have to buy the software device by the device. They can sign one agreement and have that across their entire environment. So look for more of our technology being released in this type of model, and then using the enterprise agreement to make it easy for customers to get access to all of our new innovation.
Very exciting stuff happening at Cisco. Dan, thank you so much for joining us today. For more information on Cisco's enterprise software portfolio and SIA, please visit our websites and stay tuned for next week's Tech Chat.